Welcome to the Art of Adventure. This is episode 178 with Grant Baldwin. The Art of Adventure is the podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk. You can check out the show notes for this episode and other episodes on derekloudermilk.com. And before we get started, I want to quickly draw your attention to Adventure Quest, which is coming up in a few weeks, October 13th to 19th. It is a week-long business and adventure retreat I've created. It's happening in Missouri, in the Ozark Mountains. We're going to be caving, climbing, canoeing, camping, and working on our business. There's a couple of spots left, so I'd love for you to check that out at derekloudermilk.com/adventurequest. On today's episode, we have Grant Baldwin. He's the creator of the Speaker Lab, and he's a well-known public speaker himself, and he's going to teach us what it takes to be a paid public speaker. So some of the things we will learn are what are two of the key marketing tools in getting started to be paid to speak. And what is the conversation with the event organizer look like? How do you make them look good? And then how do you write a talk that makes the audience the hero of your talk? It's not about you. It's about the people listening. And what is the best way for you to make an impact on them? He'll help us figure out what industries are the common ones to hire people to speak and which ones you can target. And we do that by figuring out what motivates you to speak. Why are you trying to be a paid speaker in the first place? So there's a lot of really great stuff that I'm sure I will be using in the future. So without further ado, here is Grant Baldwin. Welcome back to the Art of Adventure. My guest today is Grant Baldwin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate you letting me hang out with you, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you. Got a great introduction from Laden Juracek of Travel Wisdom Podcast, and I actually had to listen to your episode on his show beforehand. I always love to listen to some previous interviews so that this can be sort of like the follow up. So hopefully I'll ask some good in-depth questions about speaking. You are a paid public speaker. Mm-hmm. And so how many talks are you giving a year? How long have you been doing this?
Yeah, so I started actually about 10 years ago or so. My long story short, kind of a backstory, is that I used to be a youth pastor and worked with students in that capacity in the church world. I was doing some speaking in that space. And then after that, actually in college, I worked for a guy who was a full-time speaker. So I'd been kind of around speaking and enjoyed speaking and was intrigued by the business side of it. And so after I left the youth pastor gig I was in, I started basically a business as a speaker. So met a couple guys who were speaking full time and tried to kind of learn from them, see what they knew about the business. And it took me about a year and a half, 2 years to go from 0 gigs on the calendar to being able to do it full time. And so a lot early on was, especially in the education space, so I was doing a lot of speaking with high schools and colleges and parents and teachers, and then started doing more with entrepreneurs and corporations. And so I'd been speaking full time for about 8 years or so, and got to a point where I was doing kind of in the upper end of what I wanted to in terms of the number of gigs and of what I felt comfortable charging. So my busiest year I did about 70 gigs or so. And so at the time, though, I was having a lot of people who were asking about the speaking business and how they could get into it as well. And so I found that some people wanted to be full-time speakers and they wanted to do 50, 60, 70 events a year. And some people were like, you know what, I got a good thing going, but I would love to do 5 or 10. And so we're getting a lot of questions about speaking and the business and what to speak on and how to find gigs and how much to charge and all of that. And so we started an online program, a training program a couple years ago called Booked and Paid to Speak, where we were really just teaching everything we knew about the speaking business and kind of in a step-by-step system on how to actually find and book gigs. As we started that, and that did well. And so actually as that increased, I was actually decreasing the number of gigs that I personally do. So I still do some speaking, but it's not the primary bread and butter like it was a couple years ago. So yeah, the bulk of our time now is helping other speakers in their businesses and helping them build processes and systems for finding and booking speaking engagements and just helping others. It's a lot of fun.
Brilliant. And do you consider yourself to be an extrovert?
No, I'm much more of an introvert. In fact, most speakers I know are more introverted. And I think that that's kind of a misconception about speaking is in order to be a speaker, to be a good speaker, or to be a successful speaker, you have to be like this, raging, charismatic extrovert bouncing around the stage or something. And I've just found like that's just not the case. Like, honestly, like a lot of speakers I know I'm really good friends with, like we enjoy being on stage, we enjoy speaking to an audience, but when it's over, we also prefer to typically like go back to our hotel room or be by ourselves, or like when we're on an airplane, my headphones are on and I typically don't want to, just make small talk with a bunch of people. So I find that most speakers I know are very introverted.
Interesting. Whenever I'm at a conference or something, I find that I have to escape from time to time to regroup my energy so I can go back in front of all those people, the big crowds.
I'm the exact same way. Like I enjoy being around people and it's a lot of fun, but at the same time, for me, it can be very, very draining. And so there's times where I'll just like, I just need to go be by myself. And so some people, they don't like that, extroverts, they love being around large groups of people and that energizes them. And so I enjoy it. I enjoy being around groups of people, but at the same time, it is tiring for me. So yeah, I have zero problem just being by myself for long periods of time and tend to enjoy that.
Yeah. So I'd love to use myself as an example to sort of talk about speaking. And I'll tell you sort of where I am. And I did some improv in college, which improv comedy is really, really fun, especially in college. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I'm comfortable on stage. I do some interesting things. I might as well talk about it. So I started speaking at co-working spaces, at networking events, and so far I've spoken for free. I've given maybe 40 or 50 talks.
Nice.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with this. The feedback is generally good. I definitely think speaking could get better. But my question is, how can I be monetizing it? Can I get paid to speak? Or, I know that people can make money on the back end. So yeah, I guess like what is the next level for someone like me?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on, and you kind of touched on it there, a lot of it depends on why you want to be speaking. Like what's the win for you? And so I think you're in a spot that a lot of speakers are, especially when they get started, is they've done some speaking, they enjoy it, they've been invited to a few things, they've got good feedback, it's fun for them, they want to do more of it. But I've never really stopped to figure out like why am I doing this and how is this moving the needle and how is this affecting the business in any way? And so if for you, you're like, it's just purely fun. I enjoy it. I really like it. That's fine. Like if you then just call it what it is, it's a little outlet. It's a hobby. But if you're saying, no, this is part of my business and this is going to move the needle in some way, then you got to be really clear on how it's moving the needle and what is it that you want it to do. So there are some speakers who they're purely a gun for hire, meaning that they go in, they speak, they collect a check, they go home, end of transaction. Other speakers, they want to speak for a variety of other reasons. Maybe they want to speak for building credibility or networking or to just sharing their expertise and knowledge, or maybe just to travel. That there's a lot of speakers I know who the win for them with speaking is they just want to travel. So they're like, I don't really care if I get paid to speak per se. I'm more interested in as long as they cover my expenses and I'm able just to go to some cool places, like that's a win for me. That's fine. So some people want to sell some type of product or service on the back end. And so they do some type of training program or coaching or consulting or something like that. And so speaking is primarily a lead generation. And so in that situation, it's less about how much you're making up front in a check or whether or not you got a check, and more about what you can generate in terms of sales or revenue on the back end. So again, all that to say, there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just got to figure out what makes the most sense for you. Have you
done consulting? Have you sold a product on the back end of your speaking?
Yeah, I've done a couple different models with it. So largely, like I said, most of the speaking I've done has been as kind of that first model of just kind of a gun for hire. I would go speak, collect a check, and they hired me to speak, and that was basically it. When I was doing a lot of speaking in the education space, I had a book for high school and college students. I had a curriculum that goes along with the book, and so we would do some sales related to those products. And so even though I would typically be paid to go speak in those environments, having book sales sales or some other type of product sales on the back end. It was just another way to generate some revenue. So that's absolutely a model. There's there's sometimes where I'll go speak and I'll use it as lead generation for our online training program, Booked and Paid to Speak. And so we've done that a lot as well, and just had people that have joined some of our programs through that. And so really, again, what I would be paid in the first event is really not that big of a deal because I know what it's going to lead to. Another reason why maybe it would make sense to speak for free or at a lower rate would be if the people in the audience were also people that were looking for speakers. And so for you, it's more of a marketing opportunity to speak, knowing that it should lead to other gigs and engagements, depending on how you do. So again, there's a lot of ways to go about it, and all of them can work. I think it really just comes down to a matter of figuring out what makes the most sense for you and kind of the model that you want to have as a speaker.
Cool. What needs to be in place to shift from free speaking to paid speaking?
Well, two big marketing tools that I think you really need for any speaker that's really taking it seriously. Two marketing tools, and then one thing I'll tell you kind of on the backside. One would be just having a website, like a speaking website dedicated to your speaking. So some speakers or some people who are interested in speaking will, they've got a site and they've got a blog and they've got like a paragraph passing reference at the back of some page that's hidden about their speaking, like yeah I talk about speaking, but it's just such a secondary priority at best on the site. So if you really want to get speaking engagements, make sure your site is communicating that you are a speaker. Here's what you speak, who you speak to, what you speak about, and you're really, really clear on that. The other thing is it's really, especially if you want to get paid, is it's really important to have a demo video. Now, a demo video, it sounds intimidating, sounds complicated. It's really not. And so it's really, the best way to think of it is think of it like a movie trailer, right? So a movie trailer is basically you take a 90-minute movie, you boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes, and within those 2 or 3 minutes, you get a good idea of the quality of the movie, who's in it, the plot, the theme, all of that stuff just based on that demo video or based on the movie trailer. And the point of the movie trailer is to make people want to see more. And it's the exact same thing that's true whenever it comes to a demo video. Is most people, if they're looking between you and 2 or 3 other speakers, they don't want to see like a full 45 or 60-minute talk. They're like, we got time to watch a couple of minutes on each speaker. And pretty much within those first couple minutes, we can tell if this is someone that we're interested in or someone that we want to see more of, and they can kind of make a decision from there. And so having that demo video is really, really important, especially if you want to get paid, because one of the things that you have to remember as a speaker is you're not, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but you're not just going there to speak to an audience. You're not being hired to come just speak to that specific audience. Part of what you're being hired to do is to not make the event planner look bad. So think about it from their perspective. If an event planner hires a speaker and that speaker shows up and they do a great job, the event planner is the hero, right? But Think about if the opposite happens. If the speaker shows up and the speaker sucks, it makes the event planner look bad. It looks bad with the client. It looks bad with the audience. The event planner didn't do their job. So part of what you want to do is make the event planner look good. And so if that's the case, then if they're going to stick their neck on the line to hire you, then you want to make sure that you give them something to look at to decide whether or not they should hire you. If you're just telling the event planner, no, just trust me, I'm a good speaker, like that's something that most event planners aren't willing to put their neck on the line for, right? So you want to make sure you've got something that they can look at. Like another way to think of this is, let's say you're getting ready to hire a graphic designer, okay? And the graphic designer was like, just trust me. You just have to trust me. I'm really, really, I don't have any samples to show you. I don't have any portfolio that you can look at. No examples at all. Just trust me. I'm good. Like that's a huge, huge risk that you're taking. If you're like, I mean, maybe it is good. It's just not what I'm looking for. So you want to make sure that you have that demo video in place for potential event planners to look at. So those two things on the front end, I think are really important. Again, having the website and having the demo video. The thing I mentioned about having on the back end is I think it's really important to have good systems in place for working with clients. So part of what you're being hired to do is not only speak, it's not only to make the event planner look good and not to embarrass them, but you're also there to make the event planner's life easy, meaning that you got to think about From an event planner standpoint, if they're putting on an event, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of little details that they are working on for an event. There's just so many little moving pieces. So although the speaker is an important part of it, or speakers is an important part, it is one piece of a lot of moving pieces that they're trying to juggle and deal with. So the more that you can make their life simpler and easier and be easier to work with, the more likely they will be to want to work with you again, to refer you to others, and recommend you. And so having good systems in place that whenever you get booked, what do you send the client? How do you follow up with them? What are your systems and processes at the event itself, after the event, and following up with them? Again, the whole goal being that you make their life as easy as possible for that event. So if you do those things on the front end in terms of the website and the demo video, and then you take care of just making the life of the event planner easy on the back end, you can definitely start to get booked and get paid.
What are some examples of making their life easier?
Yeah, so a big thing is just communicating. Over communicating. So little things like one thing I always do is whenever I land, this sounds simple, but whenever I land, I travel somewhere and I land, I will always text them that I landed and that I'm there, because they don't know that, like, did he make it? Did he not? Is everything okay? They don't have any idea. They just hope that I'm going to show up at the designated time and place that I'm supposed to be there. So communicating in those little ways. Whenever I'm communicating to them or whenever they're communicating to me that, the session starts at this time and there's a sound check at this time and we're doing a walkthrough at this time, like being there on time, like just doing what you said you're going to do. If you're getting ready to go speak and they said, hey, we know that you were supposed to speak for 45 minutes, but the session's running long, we need you to cut it to 30 minutes. Be like, cool, that's not a problem. And make the adjustments. Don't be like, no, I'm the speaker. I'm really important. I'm a big deal. Everybody's here to see me, which is not true. So I want to speak for as long as I want to. Like, don't do that. Like, again, be there to serve the client and be there to make the client's life easier. So be flexible, communicate if you need anything or what you're doing or where you're at or what, always asking like what they need from you. Be asking them how other things that you can do to make the success or make the event a success, make it a win. Like, one question we always ask our clients before we even get to the event, like weeks in advance, we ask them, if we knock it out of the park for you, what would that look like? Because winning's going to look different for some clients versus others. Some may say, you know what, we're less concerned about the talk. We just want you to really interact with the audience members, before and after the session. Okay, great. I want to know that because that's their expectation. And so I want to not only know that, I want to not only ask about that, but I want to deliver on that as well. So I think it's not necessarily what you do this one thing and it makes all the difference. I think it's a culmination of several different little things that you do that makes the job easier for the client, and again makes you the kind of speaker that they want to book and work with again in the future. Yeah.
Is it easy for you at this point to cut a talk from 45 minutes to 30 on the fly, like at the last minute?
Yeah, I mean, at this point it is, but I think that's something that it's important for speakers to be aware of going into it, And I think it's important for I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll feel with it to know, what material works better with which audiences, or like most speakers would say that, speakers that do this professionally and do a lot, that you can tell within the first, minute or so how the rest of the talk is going to go. So that first minute, how they're reacting to certain things, the vibe of the room. And like, okay, if they didn't react to that, or if they didn't laugh at that joke, they're definitely not going to laugh at that joke I'm telling 30 minutes from now. Or they did like this, so I need to make sure that part later, here's a couple things I can add in. So, you definitely, I think you want to be aware of that. And again, I don't think that's something that you necessarily, learn overnight. I think it's definitely a skill that takes time, but you again, your job as the speaker is you're there to serve the client. And so if at the last minute they say, we need you to cut a few minutes of your talk, that's fine. Now you're typically going to be aware of it. I mean, if you're watching the clock and you're going, I was supposed to be on stage 30 minutes ago and I'm looking at the event program and they're still way behind schedule. Like, you probably recognize and be communicating to the client, like, hey, just a heads up, I know you guys are running a little bit behind. do you still want me to go the full 45 minutes or 60 minutes, or do you want me to cut a few things so we can help get the schedule back on track? Like, just be aware of that stuff. Like, I think that's important for a speaker to do as well. So again, the overall thing you're trying to do is make sure that you are there to serve and support the client.
And you mentioned some organizers want you to be interacting a lot before and after. Are you sort of milling around a conference floor room? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, every speaker is different. Usually, like before a session, I may walk through the audience and just kind of shaking hands. Hey, where are you from, and what do you do, and why are you here, and depending on the context of the event. So I'm just kind of making small talk, because part of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the audience on my side before I even speak. Like, all I'm doing is just being nice and being friendly and talking with people. And if I do that, if there's an audience of let's say 100 people, and I go around and I shake the hands of 10 or 15 of them and just make small talk for 30 or 45 seconds each, then hopefully whenever I get on stage, they're more likely to pay attention and to be a little bit more engaged before I've even said anything. They just know, like, hey, I met this guy earlier. He seemed nice, and he took an interest in me and what I do, and they're just a little bit more engaged from the beginning. So usually that's kind of what the front end looks like. Because the reality is, like, if you go around and you shake hands or you're talking with people, even if you're the speaker, like, nobody knows who you are. Like, I have had numerous times where, especially early on when I'd be speaking at like a high school, and I'd show up and before I would speak, students would be like, and students like have zero filter at all, so they'll just tell you what's on their mind. So they're going, are you a parent? Are you a substitute teacher? Are you, like, what are you doing here? Who are you? And so that before you speak, that's the way most of the audience is like, I have no idea who you are or why you're here, and I don't necessarily care. But after you speak, then at least people have like some type of rapport with you. They have some type of connection with you. So you're going to it's a lot more likely that people are going to, hey, I'd love to talk with you about this, or hey, can I ask you this question, or hey, can I tell you this story, or hey, can I get your 2 cents on this? And so after the event is definitely where it's a lot easier, or after your talk is a lot easier for you to begin to make connections with audience members.
Excellent. I had another question about the demo video. How many different talks can or should you include into that demo video?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's no, and in fact, I'll answer that, and then I'll take a step back too and give you some more context on the demo video. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong number to have, and there's pros and cons both ways. And I've seen speakers do it both ways. So I've seen some speakers that will have multiple clips all from the exact same talk, and they, again, it's 45 minutes worth of footage that they boil down to 2 or 3 of the best minutes, and that's totally fine. You can do that all from one talk, and I've done that. I've also had demo video footage that's me in multiple talks, which is cool because it shows like, oh, he's done this more than once. And so that, that it's good to show that too. So my current demo video, I think it rotates between footage from 2 different talks. One of the previous ones I had was all in the same place. So again, there's no right or wrong way to do it, and I don't know that I've got even a great recommended way, because I think either of them can totally work. So if you're going, I've got footage from multiple places and it's high quality footage, great, then use both of them if you want. Or if you're like, I just have footage from one place and that's the one I want to use, cool. One thing that to keep in mind whenever it comes to your demo video is you want to use footage that attracts the kind of audience that you want to be speaking to. Okay, so I'll give you an example. When I was doing a lot of speaking to high school students, and then I was starting to speak to more like entrepreneurs and corporations, my demo video footage for speaking to high school students wouldn't really translate or work as well for a demo video for a corporate audience. So what I ended up having to do was to create a new separate demo video for that audience, for this new audience. So if you're saying, I've done a lot of speaking and I have a lot of footage and it's all on the same topic, great. But if you're saying I've done a lot of speaking on a whole bunch of different topics, but this is what I really want to be speaking on and who I want to be speaking to long term, then and you got footage on that, use that. So it really depends on kind of what you have. Now, the question often comes too is that this kind of like chicken egg scenario where what happens if I don't have any footage and I need a demo video? Because it's kind of, I don't have any footage, but I need footage in order to have a demo video, and I need a demo video in order to get gigs. But in order to get footage, I got to get a gig. So like, how do I get that? So there's a couple options I would recommend. Okay, one would be that you find a local event that you could speak at for free. So this could be some type of local conference, local event, just like the event itself. is it doesn't have to be a perfect fit at all. The goal is that you're just trying to get footage. So my first demo video was mostly footage of me speaking at a local church youth group. It was a friend of mine who was the youth pastor there, and I was good friends with him, and I said, dude, I just need some footage here. So I spoke to like a small group of about 30 or 40 people for 30 minutes or something, and set up a little handy cam on a tripod on the side of the room. And that's what I had in the beginning, right? It wasn't perfect, but it worked. And so working, like doing some type of local event for free is one option. Another option, this isn't preferred, but I've seen some people do this and it can absolutely work, is that you speak to an empty room. Now, you're not trying to mislead or lie about anything, and I would only recommend this if you've actually done some speaking. And I'll give you kind of an analogy here. It's not like you've never spoke before. You've spoke, but you just don't have the footage. And so you're trying to just recreate you speaking to get footage. And so if you're going to do this, make sure you do this in the type of setting where someone would actually hire you to speak, meaning nobody's hiring you to speak in your kitchen or your living room or anything like that. So make sure you go to like a theater, an auditorium, a ballroom, a conference room, a conference hall, conference center, something like that, where someone would actually hire you to speak. And in those situations, you may just start the camera rolling and speak for 15, 20 minutes, do some of your best material. And again, you're just trying to get it down to just a couple of minutes. And that's really what you need for that demo video. So another option is you can kind of combine the two, and you could host your own event. And so that may be you speaking, but it's a room of 10 or 15 friends and family. And you're saying, hey, I'll feed everybody some pizza if you'll come out and just have a couple of warm bodies in the room, just because it's awkward to talk to myself in an empty room. And if you guys can give me some feedback on my talk, something like, you could do something like that. So another thing I would say is with your demo video and your website is try to work with what you've got and improve as you go. Work with what you've got and improve as you go. I think sometimes you may look at other demo videos or other websites and think, oh, those are so great. Mine will never look that good. Listen, like version 1.0 is not going to look as good as someone who's been doing it for years and years. So we're on, let's say for me, I've got probably 7 or 8 different iterations of demo videos at this point. We're on our 4th or 5th iteration of a website. And so when we got started, my footage was like, again, mostly me speaking in a dark room with some handy cam footage on the side of the room. And it wasn't perfect, but it worked. And so now we have a really high quality demo video, but that's not what I had in the beginning. So with all of it, when it comes to the demo video and your website, again, just make sure you work with what you've got and improve as you go.
Good. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I probably have at this point enough self tripod footage to make a demo video. So yeah, I better get on that.
Yeah, and you know what? If someone's listening, they're like, "Hey, listen, I still don't have a demo of it, but I'm super intrigued. Do I have to hire a film crew, or do I have to do anything like that?" You don't at all. Like I said, I borrowed a camera from a friend, and this was like a decade ago. So in fact, we did a podcast episode on this. I don't remember the episode number, but just look up like the Speaker Lab iPhone video, and you'll find the episode. But basically, a buddy of mine who is a videographer said, you know what, you could actually, for a demo video, you could really shoot the whole thing on your iPhone. And he walks through exactly how to do that, because the technology is just super great these days that you could do. Yeah. You could use your iPhone and still record like a really high quality. So there's no need to, hire some expensive crew, especially when you're getting started. Like, don't do that. And the other thing I would say too is, as you do more events, some events will actually shoot your session for you, and they're just doing it for internal purposes, that they're gonna sell it, or they're gonna do something with it later. But you can always ask them, as something you would want to ask up front, is if you can get a copy of the footage that you can use for your own stuff. And so that way they've already hired a film crew to come in and shoot it, and they're just giving you a copy of the footage. So that's another way that you can get footage early on.
Perfect. I know you say don't speak about everything. So how do you decide what to be speaking about? I'm imagining that it's, okay, here are the people that I want to be speaking to, so I need a talk that speaks to them. But what if they have an audience with, they want to learn a lot of things?
Yeah. So let's talk about a couple different elements of this. So first of all, you're exactly right that most speakers make the mistake of, I just enjoy speaking. I've done some speaking before. I got good feedback. I want to do more of it. So who do I want to speak to? I'll speak to anybody. What do I talk about? Whatever you want me to talk about. Like that doesn't work. In the same way that doesn't work as a speaker, it doesn't work, if you want to start a new podcast or if you want to write a book or if you want to have a blog. What's your podcast about? Oh, it's about everything. Well, who's it for? It's for anybody. Well, then it's really about nothing for nobody, right? So don't make that mistake. Be really, really clear on this is what I speak about and this is who I speak to. Now, what those should look like, it really depends. It depends on you because everybody's different. But I'll give you a couple thoughts. So there's 7 common industries that hire speakers. 7 common industries that hire speakers. You have corporations, associations, nonprofits, faith-based and churches, government and military, colleges and universities, and then education or K through 12. So those are the most 7 common industries that hire speakers. What you want to do is you want to pick one of them. Don't try to appeal to everybody. Don't try to appeal to a ton of them, but pick one of them. So make sure that you pick one of them. Then on the other side, then you can look at what is it that speakers in that industry for that specific market are being hired to talk about. What are the things that I'm passionate about? But again, you don't want to say, what do you want me to speak about? You want to be really, really specific about it and clear about it. So you should ideally have something in mind that you are interested in speaking about. And then what you can kind of do is you can kind of cross-reference and do the homework to figure out, just because I'm passionate about this subject or topic doesn't necessarily mean that organizations or groups or whoever the industry is actually hiring speakers to talk about that. Okay, I'll give you an example. So there was someone who joined one of our training programs and said, "Hey, I'm really passionate about talking about weight loss." This guy had lost a lot of weight, and so this was something like health and weight loss was something that was really important to him. And he said, "Is this something that organizations and groups hire speakers for?" Yeah, absolutely. They hire to talk about health and weight loss. And he said, "Well, I want to talk to churches about that." And I said, "Well, most churches aren't going to hire that." And he says, "Well, but it's important to them." I said, "Yes, it is important to them." And most, pastors would say that they want their congregations to be healthy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a topic that they hire speakers to talk about. So you have to find that mix between here's what I want to talk about, and here's what I'm passionate about, and here's who I want to talk to. But on the other side of it is what is it that in the industry they're actually hiring speakers to talk about? And so you have to find where those worlds combine. The other thing I would say is in terms of what it is that you want to talk about, it's really important to make sure that you're talking about something that solves a problem for the audience. You have to make sure that you solve a problem for the audience. The mistake a lot of speakers make is they say something like, "I have a cool story," or "Here's the obstacle I overcame," or, "I had some crazy life situation happen to me, and so people said that I need to talk about it." Like the audience, okay, I don't mean this to be mean or condescending. The audience does not care about you. They are thinking through, what's in it for me? If your talk is amazing and it's just about how great you are, that does nothing for me. But if I'm learning from you how I can make changes in my life or how I can improve this thing in my life or my business, and it's a talk that appeals to me and helps me change something, well, then it's the type of talk that's worth listening to. So you want to make sure that the audience is the hero. The audience is the hero, not the speaker. The speaker is there to serve the audience. So again, you have to be clear about who you speak to, what you speak about, and again, what the problem is that you can solve for that audience.
I love that. Yeah, that's I am probably guilty of that myself because probably someone said to me that, "Oh, you have an interesting story." So then I guess my question is, if you do have an interesting story, like let's take me for example again. I do a lot of travel. I do a lot of adventure sports. I've done some pretty wild things. For example, right now I'm on day 7 of not eating. It's day 7 of a fast. And so there's lots of things I could talk about and experiences. How do you incorporate those while still making the audience a hero?
So again, it always has to come back to what's in it for the audience? Like, are you telling them that you've gone 7 days fasting? Like that just makes them hungry, right? So what is something that you're learning from it? How can they incorporate it into their life, or your travel, or your adventures, or some of the different things that you've been able to do? If you just show, it's like going to a family member's house and they're just showing you like slides of, here's my slideshow of all the cool places I've been, check this, or the person that just posts pictures on Instagram of check out how cool my life is and how much your life sucks. Like if that's the tone, like, and I'm not suggesting that that's what you're doing in any way, but like if that's the tone, like people just are turned off by that. So again, looking at it from the perspective of the audience of what's in it for them. So if you were in the audience and you were listening to an interesting, engaging speaker talking about their travels or their adventures or something that they've overcome, what makes it a win for you? What makes it inspiring for you? What makes it the type of thing that you want to listen to? And I think even beyond that, what is it that makes it the type of thing that you want to take action on? And this is something that's really important for an audience or for a speaker to think through, is that an audience is always asking themselves two questions. So what and now what? So what and now what? So what meaning, so what? Why? That's great that you've been fasting for 7 days. How does that apply to me? Why does that make any difference to me? So what? The other question is now what? What am I supposed to do as a result of this? And so if it's just kind of a feel good pep talk, okay, that's great, but what do you want the audience to do as a result of that? So always be thinking through as a speaker, so what and now what? How do you make the audience the hero, and what's the action that you want them to take as a result?
Perfect. Okay. You have a demo video, you've got your website, you've got your systems and processes in place, you've got some experience, you feel like you've got a good talk, and you want to start, you've picked, okay, I'm going to pick corporations, businesses. Then who do you call? How do you actually get hired to be a speaker?
Okay. Yeah. So let's play this out a little bit more. So let's say that you wanted to speak to corporations. Okay. Do you have an idea of what you'd want to speak to corporations about?
Let's say creativity.
Okay, creativity. So what you want to start with then is corporations is really, really broad and it's really, really vague, right? So what we'd want to try to do is we'd want to try to narrow that down a little bit more. So, okay, just are we talking about Derek or a hypothetical person?
If we're going to talk about me, let's talk about speaking about adventure.
Okay, so speaking about adventure and speaking to who about that? I know we're putting you on the spot. You're the guinea pig.
I don't know, companies that are cool. That's a good question.
So this is okay. So this is a good example of this is where a lot of speakers are at. Like, I just have done some cool stuff, and I want to talk about my adventure. And I really, I'm fine to talk with really anybody that would want to listen to it, right? So we don't really take the time to really sit down and think through, like, what is it that I want to talk about, and who is it that I want to hire me? Like any type of businesses, again, makes it like I'll speak to anybody about anything. I just want to speak, right? So again, the more clear and more specific you can be, the better. Okay, so I'll give you an example. There was a guy that I just started working with in one of our programs, and he comes from the restaurant industry and had been kind of a consultant and manager in the restaurant space. And so it's a world that he knew. And so he said, I don't really want to speak to restaurants, but it's a world that I know and it's a world that I've been a part of. And so I'll just start there. And so he started by focusing on speaking at restaurant associations and restaurant groups. And he was basically talking about the customer experience for restaurants. Now, he had a topic like customer experience could apply to way more than just restaurants. I mean, he could hypothetically speak to anybody, any type of business about how to provide a better customer experience. But whenever he focuses it down and he says, no, right now I'm just focused on speaking to restaurants and restaurant associations and restaurant groups and restaurant conferences and conventions about customer experience, it's so much easier for him to be positioned as the expert and as the go-to person. And so again, this is where most speakers have a difficult time getting traction because they don't take the time to really think this through. They just, I like speaking, and so I just want to speak. Or I like doing a podcast, so I'm just going to start a podcast and kind of figure it out. And so what happens is so many gigs my guess would be this, most of the gigs that you've got Derek, has been because someone saw you somewhere, or you're doing a favor for a friend, or you've attended the conference a time or two, and so they ask you to come speak. And it's all these just kind of like random circumstance things that it's great when you get them, but it's hard to build your business on. And so when you're more specific and you're clear on this is who I speak to, this is what I speak about, well, then you can become more proactive instead of reactive. You can be more proactive in identifying and finding potential events. Okay, so let me give you an example. So let's take this restaurant example. Once the guy is really clear on, I want to speak to other restaurant groups about the customer experience. Well, now he can start to, one of the simplest things to do is you can even just start with Google and start to look up, restaurant conferences, restaurant events, restaurant associations, restaurant training groups, anything like that, just to figure out where is it that people already gather around this subject or topic. And at that point, then you can begin to reach out to them and begin to start conversations of, you are let's say that in this case of this guy, he is a speaker who speaks to restaurant groups about customer experience, right? And customer service. And there's a restaurant association that holds their annual state conference for restaurant employees and restaurant owners. I don't know. I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
Do you think that this restaurant speaker would be a good fit for them? Of course. So you're providing a solution to a problem that they already have. But this is, again, where the more specific you can be, the better. Even though he could speak about a variety of different topics and he could speak to a variety of different audiences, when he says, no, I'm really focused, at least right now, I'm focused on speaking in the restaurant space, and I'm focused on speaking about customer experience, then it's so much simpler to find those and get traction. And eventually he can kind of expand from that. So now he talks to other types of audiences and groups, but he started by just focusing on restaurants. So the more specific you can be early on, the easier it'll be to start to get traction.
Brilliant. Okay, that's really helpful. Let's see. Do you think trying to get a TEDx or TED Talk, I guess it'd mostly be TEDx Talk, is that an important credibility builder?
I don't think so. I think I've never done a TEDx Talk or a TED Talk. So I think there is kind of, again, that misconception of if you get a TED Talk all of a sudden or a TEDx Talk, it's all of a sudden going to open the floodgates of speaking opportunities. And it's just not, for like 99% of people. Now, are there speakers who they do a great TED Talk and it goes viral and it catches wind and it leads to great opportunities? Sure, absolutely. Is that the case for most people? No, not at all. If you go to like the TEDx archives, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of TEDx videos, and the high majority of them, most people have never heard of and will never watch. But there's a few that really stick out and rise to the top. So, is it a good marketing strategy to, I'm going to do a TEDx talk and just hope that I hit the lottery and that the right people are going to see it and that it's going to take off and then I'm going to that's going to blow up my speaking career? I wouldn't play that lottery if that's the game that's what I'm banking all my hopes on to build a speaking business. That doesn't seem like that you're putting all your eggs in a basket that I don't know that would give you much return. So is doing a TEDx talk beneficial? Sure, absolutely. But is it going to be the thing that all of a sudden springs open the gates for getting speaking gigs? No, I definitely don't think so.
Okay. Can an assistant do the finding of gigs for you, or maybe even an agent, but if someone's using a virtual assistant, can they find and book the gigs for you?
They can do parts of it. Okay. So I think they can do some of the finding part that you talked about. So one of the things that they could do is they could build a simple database of here's 50 potential gigs that I found. But one of the things I think it's really important that especially early on, that you as the speaker do some of the outreach, because nobody can sell you better than you. You know your talk better, you know your material better, you know the content better, you know the topic better, you know that better than anybody else. And so the other thing too is it's really important to remember that speaking is a relationship business. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. Remember something we touched on earlier is that part of what you're trying to do as a speaker is not only show up and give a great presentation, but you want to make sure that you are easy to work with. And so if the potential client or the event planner has zero interaction with you, they may still book you, but but if they're going to be hiring you, they're typically going to want to interact with you. Now, sometimes we think, well, what about these big wig speakers, who are $20, $30, $40,000 speakers, those celebrity speakers? Okay, well, that's not you. All right. So most of us, we're going to be in the couple $1,000 range, especially early on in our speaking career. And so again, if you're going to be trying to book potential gigs, I recommend that you, as the speaker, would do most of the calling or the follow-up or kind of the outreach there. So someone can help you with the basically creating that database and finding potential gigs. But once it comes to like actually booking it, following up on it, and selling up for it, I think that's where the speaker can really excel. Now, afterwards, like what I've always done is I've got a gal on my team who really helps me walk through some of this process. Once the event is booked, then I turn it back over to her, and she takes care of all the details. So remember we talked about earlier, all the different things you can do to make the life simpler for the client. Those are all things that she does. So in terms of booking, like actually getting a contract signed, of booking travel, of getting the deposit, of all the details, logistics, answering all of their questions, she takes care of all of that. And I'm not involved in that. So I'm involved in basically upfront getting the gig booked. But then after that, I turn it over to her. She takes care of all the details and the moving pieces. And then it's my job to show up and speak. So you can absolutely involve some of those, like a VA and some of those other pieces. But I think especially on the sales standpoint, I think it's very, very important for a speaker to be involved.
Okay, good. And you mentioned 1,000 or a couple thousand. Is that a good price to jump from free to paid?
So there's a lot of variables and factors that go into it. And so one of the factors would be like the industry that you're speaking to. You can charge more in some industries versus others. You can charge more speaking to corporations versus nonprofits. You can charge more speaking to colleges versus high schools. So there's that factor. Your experience level is a big factor, depending on, you're just typically, if you're brand new, you're not going to be able to charge as much as someone who's been doing this for, several years, and they're just a much better speaker. So that's a factor. So in fact, one of the things that we put together, if people are interested, we put together a free tool, a free calculator, basically. And so if you're looking at speaking at a specific event, you could literally just answer, I think, 7 or 8 questions, just like multiple choice questions, yes, no questions, and it'll spit out a number and tell you what you should charge to speak at that event. So if people want to check that out, it's over at myspeakerfee.com, myspeakerfee.com. So I definitely encourage people to check that out.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I've just got a couple more questions. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about humor, and I know that stand-ups practice their jokes, they test their material out a lot. How do you test and use humor in your talks? Yeah,
that's a great question. So one thing is that humor is really, really effective, and humor can be really, really powerful for a speaker, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a comedian. So if you're naturally very funny, you like to use humor, you like to use jokes, and you're just that kind of person, then by all means, like, use that in your material. But if you're someone that's more, academic, and you don't use humor a ton in life, then it's going to come across very, very forced and faked if you try to do it on stage. Now, that being said, is you don't have to use humor constantly. You can just use a few little one-liners here or there. The other thing too is people worry, like, I don't feel like I'm very funny, or I worry if I'm funny enough, or if this is going to be funny, or if it's going to be cheesy. One thing that, like a simple thing that people can do, is if you use slides, one thing you can do is you can use pictures and or videos to be humorous for you. So you don't even have to say anything, like just maybe telling a story and then showing a funny picture. And especially in this day and age, you've got, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and people are posting, just funny memes or funny animated, is it GIFs or GIFs, whatever it is. So there's plenty of humor online that maybe, like, again, you don't even say anything. You're just showing a picture or a video, and that piece is the humor. So you could do something like that. But again, you don't feel the need to be a comedian if you're not a comedian. Okay, perfect. Excellent. I think you're probably reassuring lots of people in a lot of different ways. This has been really helpful. I have one final question for you. Yeah. You have the magic ability to give the world a gift. What do you wish for the world to have? That's a good question. I would say confidence. and a belief that they can do something. So I think oftentimes people don't take action because we don't believe that we can actually do it. And if we don't think we're going to actually do it, or we don't think we're going to be successful at it, we don't even try. And so I think what I was trying to think through was, the ability to take action, but I don't think people will take action unless they believe they can be successful at it. So yeah, I would say something along the lines of confidence, or just believing in yourself, and that you can do it and you can make it happen.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that. That's confidence comes from a lot of ways, and often comes from adventure. So I'm right there with you.
Cool. Very cool.
Grant, really appreciate you coming on this show. Real quick, I want to acknowledge you for, first answering all my questions, but helping so many people live their dream of becoming a speaker and getting better at speaking and being businessmen. And I think you're really helping a lot of people. So thanks for doing the work you do.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me hang out with you.
Yeah. What's the best place for people to find you online?
Yeah, well, I'll give you two places. So one, if people want to dig into more of what we've been talking about in terms of building that system on how to find and book speaking engagements, then we have a free training online people can check out over at freespeakerworkshop.com. freespeakerworkshop.com. And if people want to listen to, we've got a podcast with and various blog posts and just training and teaching about speaking. People can go to thespeakerlab.com. thespeakerlab.com. The podcast is the same name, The Speaker Lab.
Brilliant. Again, really, really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time.
Cool. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was a great interview with Grant Baldwin. Hopefully that gives you some ideas for how you can move into getting paid to speak. And if you are getting paid to speak already, hopefully it gives you a little bit of extra ammunition so you can raise your rates and find better places to speak. And if you think that you want to include speaking as part of your business or as part of your brand, that's something I'm really interested in. I think speaking is a really great arm. It's one of the marketing pillars that I use along with, for example, this podcast and Instagram and the writing that I do to help build a multi-pillared brand strategy. So if you're interested in creating a business where you are the brand, you're like the celebrity centerpiece, but you're working on different projects. So you maybe have broad interests in a lot of different things, and you want to tie all that together with the brand and speaking and all different components. You want to be part of that, and you want to take it location independent. Then we should probably talk. That is something that I'm really passionate about, helping people. And as listeners of this show, you are entitled. You're entitled? I don't know if that's such a thing. I'm offering you a free business strategy session, a half an hour call with me, where we figure out what your business goals are and how we can take a step towards them. So to sign up for one of those, go to the coaching page on DerekLoudermilk.com or send me an email, derek@DerekLoudermilk.com, and we will get you set up. Thanks so much for listening. It's adventure time.